And so our goal is to help focus in on, what is it that you're trying to achieve and focus on getting you there, as opposed to just, a blanket idea of meditation without the context for why you're doing it.
Hello and welcome to Digital Mindfulness. I'm your host, Lawrence Ampofo. On the show today, we're here with Andrew Johnson and Michael Schneider, co-founders of the mindfulness and meditation platform Holistrio. With more than 10 million downloads, Andrew's work has touched the lives of millions of people around the world, and his insights today will be of enormous benefit to you all. But first of all, welcome to the show. For over 3 years now, we've brought you the best teachers and thought leaders to teach you how to be your best self in a digitally distracted and hyper-connected age. If you're new to our show, then the best place to find out much more about us is to visit digitalmindfulness.net/start, which has a collection of some required listening podcasts where we discuss everything from becoming more focused to habit building, cyberbullying, and much, much more. Okay, on with the show with Andrew Johnson and Michael Schneider. So, Andrew and Michael, thank you so much for coming on to Digital Mindfulness today and spending some time with us. I'm really looking forward to talking more with you about your fascinating work. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So I'm wondering if we can just start by telling the audience a little bit about yourselves and particularly how you came to the meditation and digital space.
Well, sure. My background is in therapy, one-to-one and group work, primarily with clinical hypnotherapy, and broadened out into meditation, stress management and mindfulness relatively early on in my career. So I was seeing a lot of clients, and I had a range of recordings that actually started off as cassettes, believe it or not, went into CDs and then MP3s. And then about 10 years ago, Mike and I connected. Mike, do you want to take over the story?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Andrew's got the deep background on the mindfulness, and he's been doing this for a long time. Our relationship together started around the time that the iPhone, shortly after the iPhone launched and the iPhone SDK became available, so that people could make apps for the iPhone. My background is technology, so I'm a developer. I write software, but I'm also a lawyer. So I'm very I do mostly licensing and intellectual property related work. So when the iPhone came out, I was making apps and had some good success early on with some of the early apps in the store. Some of my apps were among the first 1,000 apps, maybe first 500 apps on the store. So we were there really very early. And then I was a fan of Andrew's work. I had one of his CDs that I had listened to help me sleep at night. And so I was just a big fan of his work, and I knew it was great content. And it just seemed like a great fit. It would be a really great thing to turn into an app. And we met over email, this was almost 10 years ago. And we worked on our first app together, basically on a virtual handshake over email. Said, how about I build an app? I'll make an app with one of the meditations that you do, and we'll put it out and see how it does, and we'll just play it by ear. And the idea was, if Andrew didn't like how it turned out, we would just pull the thing down, and we would just see how it goes. And everything, it was very successful. We've had I think over 10 million downloads in the last 10 years of our apps, and so our relationship has grown over the years. And so I see my job as to try to get Andrew's content and Andrew's voice into as many people's phones and devices as possible.
That's amazing. 10 million downloads. Did you both know? I mean, you said you met when the iPhone was launched, so that's 2007. Did you both know then that would be the platform to bring that content or meditation to to people on a large scale?
Well, personally speaking, I don't think I had any idea of how big the iPhone would be. I was a bit of a fanboy, and I've always liked, well, for a long time I've liked Apple products, but I had no idea. But I had been sort of caught up in the generation that moved from cassette to CD and then CD to MP3. And that transition into moving into digital, which was quite early for me, was, I wouldn't say transformational for my business, but it changed a lot of the way that I thought. And the apps just seemed like a natural progression, but I really had no idea how big it was going to grow. And certainly, I don't know if I can speak for Mike, but it seemed a very organic process at the start.
Was that the impression that you had as well, Michael? Did you think that this would be like an ideal place to put the content?
Well, it definitely, at the time, the App Store was most exciting during the first couple of years that it was happening, and there was so many eyeballs on the App Store and so much interest that there was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm there, and it felt there was a gold rush mentality that felt like this was really something interesting that was happening, and that there was a need to move very quickly to try to stake out your space on the phone. So there was definitely like enthusiasm and excitement, and we felt like it was something big. But I mean, the mobile apps and phones in general, I think, just ended up being bigger than anybody could have imagined.
Yes.
It's probably a once in a generation kind of product. Not necessarily the apps, but the phone itself is, it's kind of dwarfs everything else in terms of I don't know. It's probably the biggest consumer device that's come out since maybe the personal computer, maybe bigger than the personal computer because it's in more people's hands.
Agreed. So I wonder if we could focus actually on the apps and the recordings themselves. I wonder if you can just tell the audience a little bit about what they are and why they're so important.
Well, we started off with what I would call general recordings, the type of thing that would appeal to the majority of people. Things like deep sleep, relaxation, confidence building, positivity. And they were recorded, from my point of view, I think one of the reasons that they have had such a success is that I record them mostly in one take with as very little editing as possible. And I record them myself in a very relaxed, trance, meditative, mindful state. So for me personally, what's most important for me is being in a recording studio or being in a situation when I'm recording that I myself am relaxed. But I think perhaps even more or equally as important is that I worked with clients probably for 18, 19 years. So I still regard the recording as if I'm talking to one person, if that makes sense. So it's very much like, I don't know if intimate is perhaps the right word to say, but I think a lot of people report back that there is a connection there, that they relax much quicker. So that's my sort of recording process. And Mike and I maybe we'll talk a bit later of the new project we're working on, but it's involved a great deal more recordings. And that's been a very interesting project.
I mean, I don't know if we've really, for people that are listening that haven't listened to Andrew's apps or the content, I mean, for the most part, it's we focus primarily on guided relaxation programs, and then we have apps and various topics. We have one app that's our main app right now is a free app called Relax Plus. It has a bunch of has some free content in it, and then you can also choose to buy additional in-app purchases for basic topics. So like, everything from, like Andrew mentioned, building confidence or positivity. We have tracks that are specific for weight loss and quit smoking. And so some of them are very intended to help you relax and sleep and manage stress, and other recordings are designed to help leverage the relaxation and the state of mind to achieve changes in your life. And so those are, and they're packaged into. We originally started doing individual apps, each app with one like basic topic, and now we're moving toward combining everything so that when you buy from us or you participate in what we do, you sort of have access to a much more wide variety of things you can do and listen to.
It was really interesting listening to your stories about how you came to this, particularly when you kind of relate it to, I guess, technological development. So you're talking about how, first of all, the content was on cassette tapes and then you both met with the iPhone. But I'm really interested to know, do you think that meditation and stress relief, and particularly the content on the apps and the MP3s, have they become more or less important to people as time has gone on?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I think there's 2 points here. Number one, there's no doubt that in the last 5 to 10 years, mindfulness has become much more accepted. I think everyone can see that, no matter where you turn, what you read, what you watch. There's a huge swell of interest in mindfulness, I think, for a variety of reasons. And so a lot of people are looking to be introduced to this world of what I call eyes closed inner world. And the second thing is the iPhone and the Android platforms have made it much easier for people to listen wherever they are. That was much more difficult in years gone past, when perhaps CD players were part of a bigger music centre in the lounge. We tend to forget that we can now plug into these products and take them anywhere. So people are using them on the planes and putting them on last thing at night. And a great deal of our users will put an app on last thing at night. They will set the app to a sleep ending, and they will just drift off and into sleep.
It took me a long time when I was listening to Andrew's material. It took me a long time before I heard the end of the program. It just doesn't. It is so good at putting you to sleep that often people don't. You're not conscious for more than 5 minutes of it, and then you're out. And it's perfect for that. Sorry, I thought I'd jump in.
I think that's very important.
Yeah, that's normal, right? Right, Andrew? Yeah,
that is normal. There are a variety of different opinions, but it is certainly my opinion that as people drift down into relaxation and then into what's called the hypnagogic state, which is the state you go through at night as you fall asleep, and then actually wherever that transition is actually into sleep, there is no doubt in my mind that the unconscious mind is still listening. And many people would argue that the unconscious mind is taking on board positive messages much more effectively in that very sleepy, trance-like, meditative, heavy state. So even though people may not consciously be aware of the positive affirmations and suggestions, they are finding that the benefits take hold over the first week or 2 or 3. And we always recommend once a day or once a night for about 3 weeks, primarily because for most people it takes about 3 weeks to either dissolve negative habits or build positive habits, or perhaps a mixture of both.
Well, it's fascinating, and you've both spoken briefly about this, but all of the it seems that the content that you have, it's not just to meditate better, or it's not just to generically get stressed down. It seems that it's actually targeted at specific areas of people's lives that they want to tackle. So, Michael, you were talking about sleep, for example. Like if you want to sleep, then there's something specific for that. And I wonder if you, and I asked this previously of a previous guest, but I wonder if you think that that's part of the appeal of the products, that actually it's not focused on the process itself, it's rather focused on people's lives, specific areas of people's lives.
Yeah, I think that maybe transitions well into sort of what we're working on now, which is a broader, deeper kind of platform. But this thing that we're working on now is called Holistrio, and it's a website. We're basically looking at it like almost like a Netflix for meditation content that we produce. So you would join the website and have access through the app and through the website to a wide variety of topics. And one of the things that we were thinking about when we were building this thing was, think about how is this thing different? And we like to think about it as, and Andrew can jump in, but like we think of what we're doing as kind of meditation with a purpose. Everybody that wants to meditate or relax, comes to it with a different reason for wanting to do it. Some people are just trying to manage stress, and some people are trying to become more productive, or some people are trying to be more creative. And so our goal is to help focus in on, what is it that you're trying to achieve, and focus on getting you there, as opposed to just, a blanket idea of meditation without the context for why you're doing it. I don't know. Some people might say that's meditation shouldn't have a purpose. It should just, you shouldn't be trying to achieve a particular goal with meditation. But there's different flavors for everybody. Our users are often trying to make a change in their lives, and we've had good success. So who's to argue?
Yeah, and my background is, as I said earlier, is clinical and medical hypnotherapy, and but what you find is that when you dissect away the sort of the mechanisms in hypnotherapy, it's basically 3 or 4 simplistic techniques that take people into relaxation, and in that relaxation, it is the same physical. It has the same physical result as meditation and mindfulness. People end up in that same stillness, with their breathing slowed, with their heart rate slowed, and with a sense of being totally in tune with what's happening in the moment, like mindfulness. It's the same, it's the 3 or 4 slightly different paths that lead to the same physical, energetic, emotional state, mindful state. It's actually then what you do and what you suggest in that mindful state that has the positive effect, if that makes sense.
I wonder, could you give an example?
Well, sure. One of the techniques that you use as a hypnotherapist is called progressive relaxation. And progressive relaxation, for many people who learn it, it's a method of taking your mind up through the muscle groups. Originally, it was done with actually physically squeezing. I don't mean putting your hand on your foot and squeezing, but I mean tightening the muscles in your feet and then releasing. But in actual fact, it's much more effective and quite quick over the first week or 2 as you practice this, of just thinking about it happening. And that is incredibly simplistic, but hugely beneficial at getting people into a relaxed state. But that progressive relaxation, as it is called in hypnotherapy training, is simply called a body scan in mindfulness. What we also do in hypnotherapy is we focus on the breathing, and that taking the breathing deeper into the diaphragm, and we call it diaphragmatic breathing, is simply yogic breathing or belly breathing. Or in mindfulness, it's just a breathing practice. And so the mechanisms themselves are exactly the same, but when you then get down into that meditative or mindful or trance-like or hypnotic state, or whatever you want to call it, the suggestions that are placed in the unconscious mind for, let's say, stopping smoking are just placed there. And what they do is that I like to call it a little pat on the back for people. Now, the reason it's a pat on the back is that if someone doesn't want to stop smoking, nothing on earth will change that person's mind. But if they want to, but they can't, or they're struggling, the suggestions will give them that tip. They'll give them that pat on the back and take them from maybe a 40% commitment to doing it to a 60 or 70% commitment to do it unconsciously. And when they listen to these positive suggestions on an ongoing basis, it starts to break habits, it starts to add confidence. People start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And when they change and they stop smoking, it seems a natural process. And of course it is, because it's really them that's doing it. So it's like a pep talk. It's like an inner guide taking someone through a little journey. And what works best with the unconscious mind, believe it or not, is simple, positive affirmations that are repeated on a daily basis that the unconscious mind can't really do anything but agree with, because they are just so positive. So it's an ongoing, gentle pat on the back. And for the vast majority of people, it works incredibly well. But you could call it meditation, but just using another word, it's the same thing, just guided.
That's really fascinating with regards to behaviour change, because a lot of the we've had people on the show before that talk about the ways people can actively control their behaviour change, right? Almost like by starting small. So whatever you want to do, you break it right the way down, and you start very, very small, and then you do that, and over time, you end up building a habit consciously. Right. But your approach is somewhat different. You're talking about the impacts of the unconscious mind, that listening, by kind of listening and absorbing these messages, and then changing your behaviour when you're in a deeply relaxed state.
Yes, but the equally, you've also got to say that the person needs to meet you halfway, especially with things like weight control and stopping smoking. People, they need to put the cigarettes down. They need to throw them out. They need to clear out the ashtrays. They need to do all these other things that I always will tell people in a one-to-one session. The app gives them the pat on the back that does it really well, that gives them that added 10% willpower or 20% willpower, and makes the whole journey much easier. Of course, if you talk... Sorry, Lawrence, on you go.
No, after you, please.
Well, what I was going to say was there are things that also happen without a conscious process. For example, I think the figure is something like 65% of all, certainly in the UK, and I would imagine in the USA and Europe, 65% of adults have difficulty sleeping. And what the deep sleep recording does, and many of the other apps, when you set it to a sleep ending, is that it gets their bodies back into just gently relaxing, taking their mind off the process, allowing it to happen. And then you find that after a couple of weeks, that habitual switching off really starts to kick in, and they don't need the recording anymore. But a lot of people will then reach back to it if they have a disturbed night, or there's noise outside, or their mind is going off in different tangents. So it's one of the things I love about the CDs and then the apps is that they're, as I'll say to folk jokingly, but also in seriousness, there are no calories, there are no chemicals, they're non-addictive, and they do what it says. They work well for the huge majority of people. And I think one of the reasons a big part of the reason that we've had success with the apps is that they work well and people talk about them. I've got no doubt in my mind that it's because people talk about them to their friends and family and colleagues that the sales are still ongoing after 10 years.
Earlier on, we were all discussing about, and I love the phrase meditation with a purpose, and I really wanted to kind of bring this into the present moment, and I wonder how relevant you feel that phrase is, meditation with a purpose, and particularly whether you think there's anything unique about what we face today, just as human beings living today. For example, there's been a lot of discussion about mental health and
Yes.
mental health problems, and I wonder just whether you think that whether you think there's anything unique or whether there's anything different in the ways that people are using the apps now, or the recordings specifically for now.
Well, as mentioned earlier, I think that people are much more open. I think people are much more open to talking about mental health. And secondly, because they can, I think one of the important thing about apps is that you think of a problem, you think of an issue, you go to the App Store to see if there could be a solution. And, oh my God, there's a solution or a potential solution. And it's a couple of dollars and you can get it on your phone there and then. That's incredible. The downside of technology like this, however, and not just mobile devices and tablets and computers, but we also have 400 or 500 channel televisions. We are bombarded with information all the time. And what people in my industry have been reporting for a number of years, since cable telly or satellite television has started, and then the internet, etc., is that a lot of people are simply unable to make life decisions, or they've become less intuitive. They've stopped listening to their body, and they don't notice problems until the problem hits them in the face. And I would suggest quite strongly that in generations gone past, when there was no mobile telephones, no Walkmans, showing my age now, and there was what many people would now regard as boredom as you walked to work or got the bus to work or whatever, you rode your horse to work. But in that state of going to work or doing manual labour and not being disturbed by anything, there's a sort of mindfulness, if you like. And there is a sort of daydreaming. And there's a sort of much deeper connection with your thought process, what's going on, and much more of a knowledge of an inner intuition, a conscience, that what your body's trying to tell you. And we've lost sight of that. And that's why an awful lot of people now get to the stage where they are completely bombarded with information all day. They go to their bed, they put the light off, they turn their phone off, hopefully, or they switch the screen off, and they close their eyes, and all the thoughts that should have been processed now start to process. And then people think, good God, why can't I fall asleep? Why am I constantly thinking about things? And so that in itself is the plus and the minus of the technology.
Would you say that as well, Michael? Would you say that there's anything unique about life now, as it were, that's drawing people to the apps and to the recordings?
Well, there's the thing where your phone is always with you, so it tends to be like Andrew said. I think he really hit it right on when he said, the phone is kind of where you go to find answers to your problems. So if you're feeling stressed out, or if you're looking for a babysitter, or if you're trying to build a house, any problem you have, you're going to go probably first to your phone to try to look for the answer. And so it's important that the answers be where people are looking. And so, hopefully the fact that all these answers and solutions to problems are accessible to people right in their pocket will help more people find it. In the old days, I guess if you were feeling stressed and you needed relief, you would have to go to a physical store and I guess browse through some CDs or look for something that solves the problem without being able to read a review or see if people liked it. So hopefully it's more easier for people to find solutions to their problems. We could go into a whole bunch of things about how the technology itself and access to phones and screens is causing people to be more stressed. But I don't know that there's much we're going to be able to do about that. Those screens, for the most part, aren't going away, and so we just have to find ways to be more mindful in light of all the stimulation that's around us.
I agree. And I guess just a question to you both: how do you both manage that then in life where it's hyper connected? Michael, you said you're a lawyer. Andrew, you're constantly connected as well. But how do you both remain mindful, and how do you, I guess, practice what you preach?
Well, for me, there's a couple of things. First of all, as mentioned earlier, when I do the recordings, I'm in that state and it just flows. And sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it does. But if it doesn't flow, I will sit there in silence with the microphone in front of me until I'm inspired. But I still, even though I don't really see one-to-one clients anymore, I do still do some classes. Just general, come along, and I do a little bit of meditation. And that keeps me grounded and connected with working with people. And thirdly, I have got to the stage now that if I don't take some time to be meditative or mindful, after 3 or 4 days, something will come and kick me up the butt and say, you need to do this. And it's one of the benefits, I think, of telling people, advising people that they should be doing this relaxation with the apps for 3 weeks. They get a taste. They get a taste of how deep and how simple the process can be. And they get a taste of how much better their sleep is, and they get a taste of how much easier life seems to be when they've had a good sleep and they're more relaxed, and how much more connected they are with their thoughts and their creativity and their intuition, and how many things don't really seem to be bothering them that much. But you need to get to that stage, if that makes sense. You've got to get through the process. And for some people, it's more than 3 weeks, but for a lot of people, they'll see huge difference quite quickly.
Yeah, and I think Andrew's probably will tell you that there's kind of a bit of muscle memory to it. Like part of what we try to do is teach people skills so that they can do this sort of thing on their own. And so if you do, try to practice this daily for a period of time, you sort of learn what it feels like to be in the proper mindset, and it's easier to get back there, right? So
very much.
So yeah. So I mean, part of it is just it's the way I approach mindfulness is probably no different than anybody else that has kind of a stressful job or other busy lives. You just kind of have to learn how to take the time and then you get better at blocking things out and relaxing because you've done it a bunch of times. It's just like anything else. The more times you go through the process, the faster, the easier it is to work it into your routine and to achieve that state quickly.
Well, I agree totally with what Mike was saying. I think it's, for many people, you see, meditation and mindfulness and relaxation and self-hypnosis, all these techniques that lead down to the same physical and emotional inner state, are something that you can't do. You can't make yourself do them. You've got to allow it to happen. And that's why, for the great majority of people, trying to do it yourself, having read a book, trying to do it yourself is very difficult, because you try to do it the way you've tried to do everything else in life, which requires concentration and focus and determination. But these eyes closed inner ways of being really require nothing else than knowing simple techniques, having the faith that they will take you down into that state, and then just allowing it to happen. And that's why, for the majority of people, classes are much better, or listening to a recording is much better. Now, I've got to the state, and many people can quite quickly, but you lose the technique. All you do is close your eyes with the intention of being mindful, and you become mindful. That many people need to follow techniques, and that when you get used to the techniques, they then become part of you, and then you don't have a technique, you just become mindful. And so it's very important that people realize that they need to find gentle guidance. They need to find techniques that work for them. And when you strip away all the bells and whistles that come with meditation and mindfulness and hypnotherapy, at their core, it's just allowing yourself to drift down. And I think what's really, really important for a lot of people to understand is that's the way we are meant to be. That's why, for many people, once they get down into that state, they start to think, wow, this feels so natural. But it's because it's how we are meant to be. It's just that we've forgotten to do it.
I'm wondering what you both think about this as app makers, and especially in the digital wellness space. When we kind of go onto the different app stores, it can be quite overwhelming. There's a lot of choice and there are lots of different apps. So what would you say to people who are coming to this perhaps for the first time, or they're looking for a practice, or they're looking for the right thing? What would you say the things that people really should be looking out for? What should determine their choice?
Well, gosh, that's a difficult question, because we're all very different, and we come from different backgrounds. For me, personally speaking, one of the best-selling things that we've got a couple of free apps, and in particular, there's a 13-minute one called Relax Light, and it has the most basic relaxation techniques on it, but folk can find it quite transformational when they listen. And that has been a great doorway to our other apps. For me personally, if you're learning to meditate, or if you're learning to be mindful, I believe that it's much more important to start off learning basic physical relaxation. Because if you're trying to meditate in the early days, or try to be mindful in the early stages, and you're not physically comfortable, you're not going to stick at it. If you can learn how to switch the muscles off and deepen your breathing, slow your heart rate, and get yourself heavy and deep and still, then when you go over to a more mindful or meditative technique, you will fly with it, because the body's used to that procedure. Then it's more of a mental construct. Then it's more of a letting the mind get quiet. And that's much easier, much, much easier when you're more in tune with your body and your body's in that relaxed state. So that's for me, that's completely and utterly the first step that most folk should do. Strip away, you see, there's a great deal of people who would hugely benefit from mindfulness and hugely benefit from meditation. But when they start listening to something, and if it's got, with the greatest respect to an awful lot of people who do meditation, some chanting and some bells and some sitting cross-legged on the floor, that itself distances the procedure from people who might want to learn meditation. So I would suggest no matter what practice you decide to go to, you really need to go to the basics to start with. And you'll find that very quickly you can get through those basics and move on. And very quickly, if you choose to be sitting in the lotus position, then if that's what you want to do, then that's much easier for you to do.
Thank you. That's great. So my next question is for the pair of you, and it's this. In this age where we're hyper-connected and can connect with people around the world at an instant, what would you say are the most important human traits, and how do we cultivate those?
I have my own opinions about these things, and so aside from the meditation and mindfulness goals that we're trying to achieve, I think there's lots of stimulation. There's lots of inputs into your brains from various screens and connectivity through the internet. But I think the best thing that we can try to cultivate from all that is a sense of curiosity and an ability to realize that the answers to your questions are all out there, and that's all that information and access to information can be kind of overwhelming, but there's so many positives to it that you kind of want to embrace the connectivity, embrace the screens, go find answers to your questions and explore things that you find intellectually interesting, and then use some kind of a regular mindfulness practice to help balance that out, so you get a little bit of the best of both.
And from my point of view, I would say friends and laughter is one of the best things you can do. Just connect with friends and really actually connect with them in real life. Laughter is hugely beneficial and very therapeutic. But also you need to realize that in learning these techniques, I've been in this business 20 plus years, and there are times that I need to put on a recording and listen to it and get taken away. One of someone else's recordings rather than mine, because I just I lie there and think, oh, I should have done that better, or I would do that different. But so there are times I really need recordings. But what an awful lot of people need to do is use the recordings, but realise that they should be taking some time themselves to practice these recordings, to allow it to happen, to practice the techniques on them without listening, and then they'll find that they really have the power to do it themselves.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. Where can people find out more about you and your work and connect with you both?
Well, I guess the easiest thing to do is put my name into Google, which is Andrew Johnson, Johnson, and you'll find that I'm not the disgraced, impeached American president. But a couple below that, they'll probably find me. I do a great deal connecting to people on Facebook and Twitter, so I'm always there, and I'm always, happy to chat and happy to answer any questions. And from there, you'll find the link to the website, and therefore the link to all the apps, but also the link to our beta version of our new subscription service, which we will be focusing all our attention onto in the next 40 years.
Before we do go, is there anything you can share about that? Is it the Holistrio?
Holistrio, yes. Well, I think in a nutshell, we are building a subscription service that allows people to learn the skills of relaxation, basic meditation, basic mindfulness, and then they can, if they choose to, they can delve deeper into guided meditation, silent meditation, simple meditation, deeper mindfulness. But we are also broadening it right out. We're making it a lot wider than some of our other competitors, and we are including 21-day packs of recordings for positivity, for confidence building, for getting fit. And I will be starting this year. I'm sort of going into phase 2 of the recordings for Holistrio, and we're going to start including things primarily for people on a journey. So they might be wanting to take themselves from unfit to running a marathon, or they might be wanting to completely transform their eating habits. Or they might be wanting to completely change their career and think about how they can become more creative and intuitive. And we're building all these things into Holistrio. And we're also going to be doing live weekly relaxations, meditations, and mindfulness practice. So I think I can speak for Mike and say after 10 years of doing this, we're probably more excited about things now than we ever have been. It's been a fantastic project and a great learning curve for both of us. So we're in beta at the moment, and very soon, hopefully, we shall pull the plug. I mean that in a positive way, and we'll pull the plug and we'll introduce it to our existing audience, and then take it a bit wider.
Yeah, and if people are interested in trying the beta, I mean, they can reach out to us and we can put you on the list if you hear this and you want to check it out. Reach out. We'll set you up with access. You can also look for it online at holistrio.com. There's information there too. Yeah,
and Holistrio is just a portmanteau of holistic and trio. Trio being the three cores of what we do, which you'll see in all our tagline, which is help people relax, change, and create. So it's Holistrio, HOLISTRIO.com, or at Holistrio on Twitter. Happy to chat.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, we really appreciate you having us on. Thanks again.